How much did you get from the inheritance? Huh. That's what my husband Simon asked me the night of my father's funeral. I heard your father left $3 million. So I'll ask again. How much did you get? I felt uneasy right away. I was still grieving, and Simon's question made me anxious. So I lied. I got nothing. There's no inheritance for me. It looks like only my sister and mother got something, I added. Simon smiled broadly at that. I knew it. Your parents thought you were incompetent and didn't care about you at all. I'm glad I was right. What? I want a divorce. I can't handle being with someone who's poor now. I've already chosen who I'm going to marry next, so I want you to leave my life. With those words, Simon made me sign the divorce papers. He and his family laughed at me, thinking I was miserable. But they couldn't have been more wrong. No one will ever understand how relieved I felt when Simon betrayed me. My name is Jane. I come from a family of 4, including my younger sister Kim. Kim and I never got along well, not since we were kids. My mom, Anne, always took Kim's side and defended her every chance she got. It made me feel really lonely, but I eventually got used to it. My dad, Dan, who was the only one who supported me and could help, was always busy with work and rarely home. Growing up, despite being at home a lot, I felt deeply lonely. Even as an adult, life at home never changed. I couldn't go to college because we couldn't afford it. But once I started working, I found out Kim was going to a private college. Kim is so bright, it would be a waste not to send her, they said. Jane, you're not as sharp or smart as Kim. It would be a waste for you to go to college. Since you're an adult with a job now, you should contribute to the household. And you should also pay for Kim's tuition. You're her older sister. It's only natural for you to work and support her, my mom said. Acting like this was perfectly normal. I had always endured unfair treatment, but this time, it made me furious, and tears started streaming down my face. Seeing me cry, Kim looked at me disdainfully and said, "It's your own fault for being incompetent, isn't it? You're less attractive than me and you get worse grades. You should at least try harder. If you can't even manage that, then you're truly worthless." I couldn't stand the toxic atmosphere anymore, so I moved out of my parents' house when I started working. Having to do chores every day was tough, but living alone wasn't hard at all. In fact, it felt great to be independent. At first, my dad sent me a bit of money to help out, but after about 6 months, it stopped. Instead, I got a letter from my mom. "Dad's been sending you money without permission. You don't deserve it since you never paid for your sister's school or sent us any money. I'll send you an invoice for what you owe us soon. You need to pay back every cent. Stop stealing." My mom, still hating me, sent an invoice for exactly what my dad sent, calling it repayment. I was too uncomfortable to argue, so I paid up, moved to a new place in secret. A few years later, I married Simon, a coworker, and cut ties with my parents for good. So I went back to my parents' house to tell them about my marriage. When I returned, I was shocked to see my father. He had always worked hard, but now he looked much older. His back was bent, and he seemed to struggle just to stand. "Oh, so you're back." I asked my mother about my father. "What's wrong with him?" She sneered at me. "Your father injured his back last year and can't work anymore. He's always at home now, getting in my way. He's so lazy, he can barely move. He's as useless as you, Jane." Simon was taken aback by my mother's words, but his eyes brightened when he saw my sister Kim. "Wow, you're Jane's sister? You're really beautiful. It's hard to believe you two are related." Since starting college, Kim had become even more self-centered. She dressed in expensive clothes and dyed her hair in flashy colors that were quite embarrassing. Despite being an adult, she still acted like a student, which reflected her attitude towards studying. "This guy's your husband, Jane. He's pretty cool and handsome. He doesn't seem like your type at all, Jane. Honestly, I feel sorry for you, Simon," my sister said sweetly to Simon, touching him in a way that was hard to miss. It hurt to see that, but what hurt more was seeing Simon so happy and excited about her attention. "Anyway, I don't plan on staying here long. I'm going to marry Simon. I'm cutting ties with all of you." "Well, if you're going to cut me off, can you at least wait until I'm done taking care of your father?" my mom said wearily between bites of her snacks. "I need to take care of him, but I really don't want to. Kim shouldn't have to go through this either. It's her college life, and it'd be a shame to make her waste time on such a trivial, annoying matter, right?" So Jane, it's your responsibility to take care of your father. You're both incompetent, so you'll get along just fine. My mom's words infuriated me, but I couldn't ignore my father's needs. From then on, I had to visit my parents' house often to look after him. Once I started helping out, I noticed neither my mom nor Kim had jobs. Kim didn't work part-time, and Mom stayed home since Dad got sick. Yet, they ate out and shopped a lot. I was shocked when I found out they'd taken Dad's bank book without permission and spent his savings like it was normal. Dad knew but didn't say anything. Dad, they'll keep doing this if we don't stop them. Why didn't he tell me sooner? Even if I told you, Jane, they wouldn't think they did anything wrong or apologize. I didn't want to burden you any further. You've been through enough. My dad always worked hard for our family and loved me dearly. I wanted to help him however I could. Just as I was thinking of how to help, I got a call from the hospital where Dad was taken after collapsing. I rushed to my parents' house before heading to the hospital. Mom and Kim were casually watching TV, unconcerned. The hospital called about Dad collapsing. Why are you both just sitting here? It's an exaggeration to say he collapsed. He fell in the hallway and hit his head. The ambulance took him to the hospital, so it's up to you now. We need to go to the hospital. I'm worried about Dad. Shut up. If he doesn't make it, the insurance will cover it. Why are you getting so emotional? My mother dismissed me and turned back to the TV. Disgusted, I left them both and hurried to the hospital. At the hospital, my father lay in bed, connected to tubes, barely conscious. As he drifted in and out of awareness, he managed to speak softly. I'm sorry for this sudden turn. I feel like I'm being punished. I failed as a father because I couldn't protect you from our family. Those were his last words before he closed his eyes. Dad, none of that matters. I love you. Please get better, I pleaded, holding his hand tightly. But he didn't respond. A week later, a lawyer called me about my father's will. He'd informed me that it included details about his inheritance. According to the will, I, Jane, was to inherit $3 million. $3 million. I couldn't believe it. Apparently, my father had another bank book hidden away, separate from the one my mother had taken, with $3 million in it. He left a note saying he wouldn't tell anyone else about it, his way of looking out for me even after he was gone. His kindness touched me deeply once more. I had to return to my parents' house to retrieve the hidden bank book. My mother and sister were waiting at the door, acting like they owned the place. What are you doing here now? Trying to scavenge things because Dan died? How despicable. Everything in this house belongs to me and my mother. The house, the car, everything. Don't come here acting like a thief. I knew I couldn't discuss my inheritance with people who wouldn't listen to me anyway. Wait a minute. I'm just here to collect father's keepsakes, and shouldn't I inherit something as well? My mother then produced a document and showed it to me. It was another will stating that my mother and sister would inherit everything from my father's estate. The handwriting looked suspiciously like my sister's, not my father's unique style. I couldn't read the will very well since Kim's handwriting isn't very clear. Are you suggesting this is Dad's will? It doesn't matter what you think. This is the will. I've already informed all our relatives and neighbors about it. You can't dispute it now. Refusing to let me inside, knowing I recognized the will as a forgery, my mother blocked me from entering the house. Defeated, I returned home that day, where Simon was waiting for me. Were you at your parents' house? If you had told me, I would have come with you. I wanted to meet Kim. Why are you so interested, Simon? This doesn't concern you. I went there to receive my inheritance from Dad, but they kicked me out. Wow, how much did everyone inherit from your father? I'm not sure of the total, but he owned the house, land, and everything, so it's quite substantial. I see. How much do you get, Jane? I stopped myself. I couldn't tell him the truth. My gut feeling said there was no inheritance for me. It was all going to my mother and sister. Hearing this, Simon grabbed divorce papers from his room and handed them to me. I knew it. I knew you wouldn't get anything. You're really tied to that family. Well, with a perfect sister like that, I guess it's no surprise, right? But to inherit nothing, how much do they despise you? I want a divorce now because there's no benefit for me if we stay together. Honestly, I've been in contact with your sister Kim a lot lately, and you're just in my way. Simon had already signed his part of the divorce papers, so naturally, I signed them too. I fought hard to hide my smile as I watched Simon happily carry the divorce papers to the city office. It felt like the last time I'd see him smile like that, and that goes for my mother and sister too. It was the moment when karma caught up with those who had tormented my father and me all those years. Later that day, I met with the lawyer who handled my father's will and asked him to accompany me to my parents' house. There, when I showed my mother and sister the real will, their usual calm expressions turned pale as they read it over and over again. That's a lie. I have a will here that clearly states only Kim and I are supposed to inherit. Then let's settle this with a handwriting analysis. If it's proven the fake will was intentionally made, you could face charges of fraud. Are you okay with that? The lawyer's challenge left my mother speechless. I've also heard from Dan about many things. He said even as his health declined, you neglected him, sold his belongings without permission, and did as you pleased. Kim, you were involved in risky behavior with men and gambling, paying off debts with his personal bank book without permission. Due to this misconduct, both of you have been disinherited. If you interfere with Jane's inheritance rights, we'll pursue legal action against you as well. As the lawyer finished, both my mother and sister sat there in disbelief. I decided to retrieve my father's hidden bank book and leave their house for good. Finally, I was completely free from my family. After that, Simon, unaware of the truth, apparently confessed to my sister and started dating her. My mother and sister, keeping the inheritance issues hidden, quickly married him to support their lifestyle and used him like an ATM. Simon, oblivious to their schemes, bought several luxury cars and quit his job, relying on what he thought was their inheritance. Eventually, Simon began to suspect something was wrong. When he realized there was no inheritance, he urgently contacted me. Jane, I was mistaken. You're all I have. I want to start over. Well, I don't need you. Besides, you have Kim now. Take care of your wife properly, okay? I said calmly and hung up. In fact, just minutes before Simon called, I received a call from Kim as well. You've destroyed my life. Simon quit his job and went on a spending spree as soon as we got married. I can't believe I married a man who only cares about money. He's ruined our family name. What are you going to do about it? I responded calmly to my sister, who was shouting hysterically. Kim, you're just as money-minded as him. You two are a perfect match, really. And I heard you and Simon got along very well while he and I were married. You should be happy your love worked out. I'll file for compensation for the affair later, though. From now on, let's communicate through our lawyers. I never want to hear from you again. But I'm your sister. You're not treating me like family. Don't make me laugh. You were the one who didn't treat me like family. With those words, I ended the call with my sister, blocked her number, and never heard from her again. I finally felt free. With my father's inheritance, I built a house and moved in. I found a new job as an office clerk and now enjoy a busy but satisfying life on my own. Sometimes I feel lonely, but I have my memories of my father to comfort me. I'm heading out now, Dad. I felt my father's gentle smile watching over me as I looked at his picture hanging on the wall of my home.